about tech buy-in, it starts here. This is a CEO guide to board engagements with Board.Dev. Excuse me, I said .bev, .dev. You're gonna hear me make some mistakes today, but that's okay. I'm gonna show you how you can engage today. I know many of you have been to our webinar, so you know how to engage. Feel free to put your questions in the chat, also in the Q&A. So on the next slide, you're gonna see that you'll get the video probably within 48 hours, maybe later today, who knows if technology acts right. But there's one important thing I wanna share with you. There's gonna be a survey that's gonna pop up when you leave the window. We'll also put it in the chat towards the end. We would love if you would fill it out, just a brief survey. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers so I can move out of the way. Today, we have Shruti Ramaswamy. She is the Executive Vice President here at TechSoup, and Shruti manages corporate relationships. Look, so much she does, so many hats, but this is to help technology companies distribute and engage with civil society, which is you guys. And then we're also happy to introduce Alethea Hannemann. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name right, Alethea. She's the CEO and founder of Board.Dev. Yes, Alethea helps nonprofits bring technology leadership into the boardroom to drive innovation, manage digital risk, and build long-term resilience. And then we have Julie Kuglich. Julie, please give me thumbs up if I pronounce your name right. Please let me know if I did it. She's the executive director and the co-founder of Team for Tech. I love that. I visited your website. It is fire, Julie. So thank you for being here. Julie, the Team for Tech works to help to accelerate impact for community-based NGOs serving under-resourced contexts worldwide, improving education, ultimately prepares learners for better jobs. I'm going to turn this over to Shruti Ramaswamy. You guys have a great webinar. Thanks so much for being here. Shruti, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Aretha. And thanks everybody today for being here. Hopefully many of you have been to TechSoup webinars before, but we're really excited today about this topic. Just in case any of you are new here, TechSoup is a global nonprofit. We're here to equip people, all of you as change makers, with the transformative technology solutions and skills that you need to improve lives globally and locally. Really, we're here to help you guys with your impact, with your mission work. Go to the next slide. Our goal is to help organizations find the resources and support that are necessary to manage their technology and digital solutions. And we do that in a variety of different ways. I'm sorry, if you don't mind, you can click through all of them for right now if you want. But really, many people might know us in some ways for the work that we do to bring in a marketplace or a catalog of affordable technology products to the sector. So lots of major brands like Microsoft, Dell, Intuit, Wix, Cisco. What we try to do is really make sure that you have a one-stop shop, that you can try to understand what technology needs that you have and come to one place to see what kind of discounts and donations might be available to you. But we know that access is only one part of the process. And for many of us who might not have a team that are technologists or a team or access to consultants and things like that, we also try to make sure that we can ease that burden of technology adoption. And we do that through services. We do that through content, courses, and trainings to help nonprofit staff and volunteers build up their skills and expertise. Our services include just helping make decisions, helping with small things like installation of a software, or just being able to manage software and hardware as outsourced resources as well. We also, as a nonprofit ourselves, work really hard with foundations and some of our other corporate donors on grant-based programming, really helping strengthen civil society through specific interventions. I'll share some resources in the chat, but some of that grant work includes a lot of skilling centers, a lot of training, a lot of courses that are freely available to anybody here to access. One of the things that I'm really excited about with this conversation today is we did a recent study thinking about what nonprofits are struggling with, how we can help. And one of the things that really was visible in a lot of the experiences that we saw was that organizations obviously see the benefit in using and investing in technology. And when we asked 76% of organizations, and we surveyed about 12,000 organizations globally, said that they see the benefit in investing in technology for technology ease and for efficiency. But at the same time, only 25% of organizations actually had a tech strategy or a timeline for digital readiness. And there are key and big reasons reasons why that is hard for organizations, why that's hard for everybody. The top reasons for digital improvement and the barriers to that we saw was number one, not a surprise to any of us. 77% said there was a lack of funding for this purpose. It's not every day that we get funders or donations that are specifically towards our own investment in our technology. There's 56% said there was a lack of IT consultants or internal staff to help facilitate adoption of technology. 53% said there was a lack of staff skills or training. And 51% said there was a lack of awareness on digital tools that are even available to the sector. And this is kind of the starting point, and hopefully, and maybe it doesn't, but I assume that some of this resonates with the people here and all of us. This is a struggle. This is an ongoing struggle. And that's exactly why we're really excited to have Board.Dev here today to talk a little bit about all of the steps that we can take to better engage our boards in supporting the technology strategy, particularly as volunteers. Many of us here as volunteer boards, obviously some of them, I know a board that I'm on part of, we're working board members, we're working volunteers, we take positions, each one of us wears a different hat. And how do we really think about getting that technology skills that we know that 76% of us agree is really necessary for our own ease and efficiency into the hands of that board? And so Board.Dev is transforming the future of nonprofit leadership by bridging that gap through strategic training, board placement, and we're really excited. I'm excited to pass it on to Alethea today to talk a little bit more about how we can learn more and engage our boards more to be more technically ready for digital adoption. Pass to you, Alethea.
Excellent. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Shruti, for that introduction and that context setting. Those figures you cited are so important. Want to say, as we get into this, also a big thank you to TechSoup. TechSoup has been just such a critical partner to the sector for decades, and you don't just make software more affordable, you're bringing tools and training and really the confidence and leadership that nonprofits need to really use technology well. So really appreciate being in this conversation together. So hey everyone, I'm Alethea Hannemann. I am the co-founder and CEO of Board.Dev. And we are here to strengthen nonprofits by bringing tech expertise and leadership to the board level. Really excited to have someone here in conversation with me, Julie Kluggage, the founder and executive director of Team for Tech. She's been doing this effectively for many, many years. So we're going to dive into a fireside chat with her. But first, I'm just going to take you through a little bit about the potential of tech board leadership and what that looks like. We'll finish up with some ideas for each of you for how you can activate this today, how you can start getting moving with having these conversations at the board level. So a little context setting. Why is Board.Dev here? Why do we even think about this? Number one, the stakes are really high. This is probably not news to you because you're living it every day. But nonprofit leaders are absolutely stretched thin, and tech challenges are really adding to that. New developments like AI, may have heard of that, are bringing both really big opportunities, but also big risks. And everything is just moving at an increasingly fast pace. So the stakes for the sector are really quite high. And part of the challenge is the gap in expertise and resources. So the reality is nonprofits spend only about 1/3 as much on technology as companies do. And perhaps related, only 16% are reporting high digital maturity. And yet, nonprofits that are tech savvy are 4 times more likely to achieve their missions than those that aren't. So that's the gap we're really here to close. And leadership, tools, product funding, absolutely critically important, but leadership really matters as well. So, boards have always had lawyers and accountants at the table. I'm sure you all have lawyers and accountants on your boards as well. They have that skill set at the table, and they've got that topic on the agenda. But today, technology is just as central. And so, we want to make sure that all boards both have a tech leader and have the fluency across the board to talk about these really important things. they can, boards can help guide strategy for technology. So making sure investments like AI or systems really align with your mission. So they're values-based. They can help make sure that your tech choices improve ROI rather than detract from it. So, what are the right questions to ask when you're bringing a new tool in or going in a new direction? They can also help make the case to funders, which we always need in the nonprofit sector for sure. A big part of the board's role is managing risk. Ignoring tech, as part of that risk would be folly right now because everyone is making some big tech decisions: cybersecurity, data privacy, again, AI. And then thinking about mentoring staff, really helping make the most of the team that you have on board. You may not have a huge tech team. You may not have anyone with tech in their title, period. And you can still manage tech effectively, particularly if you have a senior level resource who can help you mentor that person, figure out what professional development they need to be thinking about, open the doors to new resources and networks, which again is something I know Julie knows a lot about. So I'm excited to get into that conversation. So, one thing we get asked about a lot is, technology is such a big piece of our budget, or it should be. How can boards help here? And here are some of the ways we've seen boards be most effective. A tech leader can help you avoid expensive mistakes because they may have made some of the choices or been in the decision points that you're in. What does it mean to go down this path with a particular product or a particular way of delivering programs? They can help you negotiate smarter with vendors by bringing up questions you maybe didn't even think to ask. And finally, they can really help you scope pro bono offers so they turn into real support. Many of our organizations are lucky enough to have folks who really want to dive in, and they say, hey, I've got a team. We can help you with your website. We can help you with your CRM. If you are not a technologist, it can be really challenging to manage those offers and figure out how to get real value from it. And then finally, critically important to the budget, a board member can help you strengthen your fundraising pitch. If you have a tech leader on your board, you're already showing funders that you're serious about using tech for impact, but that person can also, really help you translate your asks or your needs into, something that funders can understand is critical, is urgent, and must be funded now. So that's some of the financial benefits of having a tech board member on your team. And we're going to talk really quickly about a couple ways to get started. You can engage your current board. Oftentimes people actually have someone from the tech industry or with a tech role on their board already. They're just not quite sure how to engage them. Or you've got folks who are kind of tech adjacent, who could be more tech fluent, and what you need to do is get them focused on the technology needs of your organization. So we've got a couple tools. There are definitely more tools out there, but we've got a couple tools that can help. You can definitely visit our site to check these out. We've got tools like the Tech 28, which is a conversation guide, a set of 28 key questions that you can use with your board. You can also use guides like our AI for Boards guide, so that, you can start getting your board centered on that conversation in particular. You could also stand up a tech committee. Again, this doesn't need to be led by someone with tech expertise. It just needs to be led by someone who is willing to work with you to take accountability. So that can be really important. And then you might also say, okay, we're going to get the whole board tech fluent, but I really want someone with expertise to own that. So you can add a new board member with tech expertise, and we'll talk a bit. We also have some resources about how to do that as well. So quick dive into the Tech 28. I mentioned it's a set of strategic questions for boards. So, these are questions like, hey, how might we use tech to reduce costs or increase capacity? Or what's our recovery plan if systems go down? And there's no right answer to this. Every organization is different. In most cases, it's just important that you do have an answer and start the conversation because it can really spark some meaningful discussion. So you can use these questions at the leadership level, at the staff level, or the executive level in your organization, and also with the board. Might want to use them as the basis for a section of a board retreat, for example. Technology is going to continue to evolve, but these are questions that should be evergreen for a little while to help you think about investments and resourcing and, values-based strategy. So that's the type of discussion that we really encourage at the board level. Organizations that are able to get that leadership alignment really see some really fantastic results because tech is so integral to everything a nonprofit does in this era. So that's why we reached out to Julie to come in and talk a little bit about what tech leadership in action looks like. And I am such a fan. I'm going to let Julie introduce Team for Tech herself, but my background is in pro bono, and Julie and I have worked together in the past. And I so admire the way Team for Tech brings corporate talent to some of the most pressing opportunities with education nonprofits worldwide. And people really love their programs. It doesn't matter if it's a big trip or a small afternoon event, they always come out changed. I hear this over and over and over again. And the nonprofits are utterly changed and as well. So another thing too is, Team for Tech has made some really big and intriguing pivots in recent years with all of the bumps and interesting times we're living in. And they've managed to not just preserve, but really increase their impact, which is so difficult to pull off. So I'm really excited to talk to Julie today about some of how she's done that. But Julie, before we dive in, I've got lots of questions for you, but you want to say hello?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing. Introduce Team for Tech to the organization. Can you tell us a little bit about, or to the audience, can you tell us a little bit about your journey in scaling a tech nonprofit as a non-technologist? What do you do, and how have you been able to steer that as someone who didn't start out as an engineer?
Yeah, great. Well, Team for Tech is a nonprofit. So like everyone here, I'm running a nonprofit. We started in 2013. So we are going into our 12th year. I personally am based in the San Francisco Bay Area, but our team is global. So we have regional hubs in Nairobi, Kenya, in Chennai, India, and Sao Paulo, Brazil. Our mission is to help education-focused NGOs around the world, or nonprofits, who are operating in under-resourced communities use technology and also evidence-based teaching strategies to build employability skills with their learners. So ultimately, we are trying to help nonprofits who are working in education use technology as a tool to build valuable skills with their learners that are going to help those learners get improved jobs in their future. Through our free online community of practice, we currently are working with over 1,100 NGOs in more than 100 countries around the world, and we provide them with digital resources, with training, and as you were talking about, Alethea, with pro bono consulting from employee volunteers, so that these NGOs can use technology and evidence-based teaching strategies to build, digital skills, innovation skills, creative skills, social-emotional skills with their learners for high-quality jobs. So to your question, I think it's really important for me to always recognize and acknowledge that I do not consider myself a tech expert. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a software developer. And, we pride ourselves on that. We intentionally have formed our global team of education experts who take a human-centered design approach to working with our nonprofit partners around the world. So we, are most importantly trying to understand the education context that our nonprofit partners are working in. What are their goals with respect to building employability skills with their learners? And how can we work with them to co-design technology-supported solutions that are going to advance those goals? We're completely platform agnostic. We don't build technology, we don't sell technology. Our goal is really to just curate what technology solutions have worked for nonprofits in similar contexts, and then figure out how we can best share that knowledge and support implementation of those solutions that work. Even with our skilled volunteers who come from the technology sector, we have a whole training curriculum that's focused on human-centered design, so that we make sure to create it as a level playing field where technologists are learning from the nonprofits and their education programming and vice versa.
Wow. It is, it's such an impressive program that you have built. And I know you've worked with so many amazing nonprofits. Hopefully we can touch down on a couple of those stories, a little bit later. And I just want to call out for everyone here. This is sort of a, it's sort of a meta conversation in that, we're talking about using technology to, achieve bigger things with your mission. And that's something that Team for Tech does with their mission. And then they're supporting different organizations and using tech for their mission. But there's another sort of double level here in that, Julie, and your work with nonprofits, you can talk about how you have engaged your board for technology issues and also how you've seen them do that. So let's start with that first piece. How Team for Tech has engaged folks with tech expertise to help you make progress towards your mission. How did you first get your board talking about tech? When did that happen? Technology is part of your strategic plan. And what helped you get buy-in and make that a really productive conversation?
Yeah, so I mean, because of our sort of origin story here in Silicon Valley, my co-founder and I had both worked at Intel Corporation before we started Team for Tech. Most of our board members either come from the tech sector or partner with the tech sector in their day jobs. So I think it's important to acknowledge they're sort of tech enthusiasts to begin with. But as it relates to our own operations, we're always learning about how we can be more effective with technology, and our board really pushes us on how can we achieve the greatest scale with our inherently finite resources, asking us why we've chosen a particular technology solution for our operations, talking about what our own constraints might be, either budget or human capacity in terms of adopting new solutions. So, one of the things I'm excited to talk about as we get into our conversation, a big pivot for us, as you mentioned, was launching this online community of practice in 2021. And so our board really pushed us, up until that point, we had been going in depth with about 54 nonprofit partners around the world, supporting them with funding, with pro bono consulting, with, coaching from our own staff. But what we found is, we were creating so many knowledge resources and deliverables out of those, deep dive partnerships, but we weren't maximizing our impact because we weren't sharing them globally. And so that's why we really pushed ourselves to launch this free online community of practice where we could share all of these resources with NGOs around the world who are in this same situation, looking to build employability skills with their learners.
That's such a great story, and I love it because it's not, I love it in particular because it's not like AI and bleeding edge. Like you were able to just radically increase your impact by thinking through, okay, how can we share this better and building an online community that sounds like has become, really important to your impact. So love that. One of the questions we often get from nonprofit leaders when they're thinking about involving their boards more in tech strategy or maybe bringing on a tech leader onto their board, one of the questions we often hear is, how do I know this person isn't going to get too in the weeds? Like these feel like staff level decisions. So I'm curious if you can share with the group here, like how an example of how you make that balance work and like, who makes the calls. So maybe, maybe you've had to make a tough like tech related trade-off due to resources or, go in a different direction. How did you make that call and then communicate it to the board, and what did the roles look like there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think our board has done a great job of just kind of asking those strategic questions. I love your resource of the 28 questions because that's what works for us. And, I know we're going to talk a little bit more about AI, but, our board is always just kind of prodding, questioning, asking us like, okay, are we sure that, we're using the most efficient solutions in service of our mission? Because all of us here are strapped for resources. So, they're asking those strategic questions. And then on our staff, I'm almost embarrassed to admit that it wasn't until about 2 years ago that we created a data director position. And so we brought in somebody full-time to really think hard about our data collection and management systems. And, it's really transformed our work just in the past 2 years. So, during COVID, we tripled in size. We were about 7 people for our first, 7 or 8 years. And then related to the changes we made around our community of practice, we tripled in size very quickly. And so we went from just using like spreadsheets to organize our work to like having these real collaboration challenges, like who's doing what, in service of our annual objectives and key results. So just bringing this data director in, has helped us really upgrade our Salesforce architecture. We always have used Salesforce for, partner tracking, partner data tracking, but now we have these beautiful dashboards that we can use to monitor impact, engagement with our platform, and also for our own, monitoring and evaluation, which of our services are having the greatest impact. So, we've really upgraded our Salesforce usage for that. And then just very basic, like we use Asana now for all of our project management and tracking. So we have our annual objectives and key results in Asana. We use the goals function, and then we have each team has their project and tasks mapped to those annual objectives and key results. And so it's just a way to see what everyone is doing at any given time, what are all the interdependencies, and how we can better manage our work. So I guess getting back to your question, when the board is asking those strategic questions about how do we know we're leveraging technology in optimal ways for maximizing our impact, it's our staff, it's our data director, who is sharing with them, well, this is what we're doing right now, and kind of, getting into discussion with them around that.
That's great. That's really helpful. And I love all the examples you used because they illustrate, big decisions and directions you went in that were both external facing, like involved in your programs, and internal facing, using Asana yourself. And those, both of those things have real implications for costs and for risk and for, how you're making progress. So that's really helpful. And, one thing you mentioned about the Tech 28 that I wanted to call out too, that's great for thinking about how you might have these board discussions. These are 28 key questions. They're not a checklist. So, we haven't created a checklist that a board can use to grill their executive director. Do you have this, this, and this? They're really, they're questions that help start a discussion. And many of the questions focus on the board themselves. How well are they doing their job in supporting the, supporting the organization? And that's the type of conversation you're describing here. So I love that. Can you talk about a time, maybe, let's think about the board's role in risk management, for example. Was there ever a moment when you had a tech-related risk, like a systems failure, or maybe something related to data, that happens, where you had to have your board get more involved, or involved more, acutely? How did they respond, and how did you manage that?
Yeah. Well, thankfully, we have not had a data security breach or a
Good.
system failure, so I am
Victory.
grateful for that. But we partner with many corporate partners who are engaging their employees as volunteers. So we are intaking information from those corporate volunteers. We have big funders who are doing due diligence around our data management. policies. And so that's a great area that our board has gotten involved. Our board chair is a chief administrative officer in her day job. So she has a lot of IT systems management experience, and she proactively reviews those data management policies that we are submitting in these due diligence questionnaires to our funders, to our corporate partners, just in the context of risk management and how you would think about your overall governance policies. I think it's great to have our board involved in, kind of knowing what these are our data management policies and making sure that we're using best practices. There was kind of one failure that I wanted to go back to, just to be, completely transparent. We talk about our online community of practice as such a success, and it is a success. It's going really well, but we definitely had our bumps along the way as we tried to launch it. So it was 2021 when we first wanted to launch this online community of practice. Demand for our services basically tripled like overnight when COVID hit, because if you think about every education program around the world, all of a sudden they couldn't meet with their learners in person. So every nonprofit in education had to virtualize their, teaching and learning programs. So we wanted to launch this online community of practice, and we sort of had an idea, like we want to be able to share the resources we're developing, and we want to have a discussion feed, and we want to be able to engage skilled volunteers to do online consulting with these nonprofits around the world. And we just started, trying to build it ourselves as kind of a password protected section of our website, working with consultants. And it wasn't until we got sort of 6 or 9 months down the road that we were like, wait a second, this is not the right way. This is way too complex to try to build some sort of customized solution. So we had to take a step back, and we looked for, kind of white label platforms, and we ended up with a great partnership with Mighty Networks. And so now we use the Mighty platform as the foundation for our online community of practice. But I want to be honest that, even we, as like someone who tries to co-design solutions with nonprofits around the world, like we had to learn the hard way with respect to our community of practice.
Yeah. That's a great call out too, because this is iterative. And I think sometimes these discussions about technology can open up for some a new way of working with their boards, where you don't always have to have, it's okay if you work through the answer together occasionally. Well, something we spent a quick slide on the financial benefits, the potential financial benefits of having a tech-focused board member or a tech-fluent board. That's something we also often get questions about. Okay, is this gonna, right now funding is my biggest concern. How is this gonna help me with funding our costs management? And, when you think about technology, I'm sure, again, no one on this call will be surprised to think about how the sticker price of a product, for example, is just the beginning. And the true cost of anything you're bringing on board in terms of tech is going to include implementation and maintenance and upgrades and training to make sure you're using it well. And AI really is shifting that even further, because so many tools feel really cheap to start, but then you've got these ongoing costs. So Julie, can you talk a little bit about that, about how your board comes into those conversations? How do you talk to them about the true cost of tech? And why does that matter?
Yeah, so I mean, because our board comes from the tech sector, they're really familiar with this total cost of ownership. So, you'll hear that a lot, like TCO, total cost of ownership. And so, within our own operations, we have an operations section of our budget. It includes not only like subscription costs, license costs, but also like maintenance costs, consultants that you need to, customize a solution, maintenance, infrastructure required to implement the solution. But kind of, as you said at the outset, this conversation is a bit meta, because it's, we're thinking about these total cost of ownership questions for ourselves, but perhaps even more so for the nonprofits we work with around the world, who have like major contextual challenges in terms of not just the upfront subscription costs, but infrastructure compatibility. So do they have the connectivity that they need to use like an online form or some sort of online solution? Do they have the staff capacity to manage the tools in-house? And this comes up all the time because we're working with these nonprofit partners on their monitoring evaluation systems, an engagement platform for their beneficiaries. We just worked with a nonprofit in India on a chatbot for their learners. So, you know, what makes sense for them to implement, both in terms of, you know, upfront licensing costs, but also like staff capacity to maintain, and the underlying infrastructure that they need to really make it effective.
Yeah, that's a, you know, a great illustration of why these board discussions can be so helpful. I think sometimes, you know, we put a line item in the budget around technology, but that doesn't really cover the full cost of ownership. And, you know, if your board is not prepared for that, then they're not necessarily going to support it. That's really helpful to hear. Well, you know, maybe can you talk a little bit about some of the most innovative uses of technology you've seen across the organizations you've served? You know, what's one way you've seen technology expand what's possible for an organization?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, AI is on everyone's minds right now. And, you know, we're thinking of it again on both of these levels. You know, for ourselves, what is our AI usage and implementation policy? And our board is asking, you know, how can you best leverage AI to streamline your operations? You know, how can you improve efficiency around the way you work? But then also, we're leading multiple AI capacity building learning cohorts for NGOs around the world. So we have a 3-year grant to lead AI capacity building cohorts for NGOs in Africa who are working in education. And we just completed year 1 of that. And then we're partnering with Dell to lead an AI capacity building cohort for NGOs who operate Dell's solar powered community hubs in 7 countries around the world. And basically in these cohorts, we're helping these NGOs come up with implementation plans for how they can use AI to both improve what we call their edu efficiency, the efficiency with which they deliver their education services, and then also improve the quality of teaching and learning. And we've seen some great use cases come out of these cohorts. So to your question, these NGOs in Africa that were in our first cohort, the main use cases were around lesson plan development, teacher coaching and training. So a chatbot to provide coaching to teachers, student assessment, data automation. There was one of the NGOs in Uganda is using voice AI recognition to provide learning resources to students on their mobile phones. So I think this has kind of opened this whole new world of innovation in what we're seeing.
Yeah, I love those stories, and I feel like I'm going to need to get like bullet items on each of those from you. You know, something we often hear um, from nonprofits and from philanthropy in general is like funders are not necessarily aware of all of the really unique and just uniquely powerful use cases there are for technology for in the social sector right now. So the more we can all be aware of those and sharing those, the better. So to everyone on the call, we are going to open it up to Q&A in just a second. I'm going to ask Julie one more question, and then we'd love to hear from you all before we move it along. Julie, thinking about culture, you know, you've said, you know, you were born in Silicon Valley, or the organization was born in Silicon Valley, and I'm not sure where you were born, but
Both are true.
okay, both are true. I was right. And you know, you've always had a board that was really tech fluent. But for those who don't, folks who don't necessarily have technologists on their board, like what's one thing you would say to them that could be helpful in you know, helping people build comfort in talking about, you know, you're not a technologist. How can you help them build comfort in talking about technology and getting their board ready to talk about technology, even if they're not specialists or experts?
Yeah. Well, again, I just love all the resources you're providing. The 28 questions are a great starting point. I would just say, there are also so many free resources out there by sector, so we work in education, but, for climate, for food security, there's so many tech capacity building resources out there. So I would just spend some time, use ChatGPT to search for them. And, I want to make sure that I mention we're the lead training partner on a initiative funded by the Gates Foundation called AIforeducation.org. And if you go to that website, and I know Jessica's going to put it in here, but AIforeducation.org, there's a free prompt guide for educators, AI prompt guide for educators. So how can you, craft the most effective prompts in working with AI? There's free benchmarking of like which are the best large language models or AI solutions for the education application, environment. And TechSoup, my gosh, I know TechSoup is going to share at the end, but so many tech capacity building resources from TechSoup. So I guess that's the sequence I would approach it. Like start with those strategic questions that you have so helpfully provided, do some research, use AI to do the research and just say like, what are some of the best solutions that are being used in, XYZ sector? And then, just open up a discussion with your board. It can be high level. I think you don't have to have all the answers. It's just that, I think it'll be laudable that you're even trying to, maximize your impact by questioning how you go about doing your work.
Exactly. Yeah. We just keep saying over and over again, just start the conversation. And that's gonna, move everything from there. And yeah, it's so important that organizations like TechSoup exist and that, you're leading things like in the education sector, because the worst is for nonprofits, for boards and leadership teams and organizations to be trying to solve problems and to, capitalize on opportunities in silos. If you're just starting out in using tech in a more powerful way, there's definitely, folks you can learn from. You just have to get connected to them and figure out how to, I don't know, plug those resources into your context. So
yeah. And for everybody who works in the education sector, please, like one of the main points I want to leave you with today is that come to our community of practice. It's free, community.teamfortech.org. And we would love to partner with you and support you as you're thinking about how to use technology in education.
awesome. I'm sure we probably do have a lot of education nonprofits on the call, actually. So yeah, I want to turn it to everyone. Any questions for Julie about how she's made this work, or for, TechSoup or Board.Dev, questions you've got about leveraging board leadership? We do have one question here. The question is, how do you find tech funders? And I'm going to reframe this a little bit as thinking about how, a board member can help you find or make a case to funders. Julie, it sounds like you've got folks who are, connected to technology stakeholders. Can you talk a little bit about how your board, might engage, how their tech fluency might help you raise money for the technology things you need to do?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt our board, works in the tech sector. That has been helpful. But I think, there's a more general approach that could also be helpful, which is that, whatever sector you are working in, look for those conferences or those networks of people who are applying technology to solve problems in that sector. So, I think N10 is a great resource, it's for all the chief technology officers working in nonprofits. In our sector, education, there's ISTE, the International Society of Technology and Education. So whatever your sector is, like, look for those who are applying technology to really try to address the problems, be most innovative, and then just start networking with those people. And then I think that's the way you find funders who are interested in applying technology solutions to that given problem, if that helps at all.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, just like be in the right rooms as much as possible. And I would build on that to say, Building fluency across your board is going to naturally create that potential because no one is able to seed seed a pitch or an opportunity about something that they don't understand or don't know exists. They don't know you're thinking about something transformative in technology. Your board can't talk about it. They can't get someone excited about it. They can't talk about how tech is central to your mission. So when you think about tech fluency, it's really just a different way of thinking about, what do you need your board to be fluent in for you? Like it's organizational fluency, just with that tech lens, so that they can talk about opportunities. So I think that's, really important and really high potential. Sorry, did you want to add to that?
No, I see we have this new great question from Barry in the chat also that I would love to address. I think it's phrased so
Ooh,
well.
yes, I do.
I,
Yeah,
I
let's
don't
do
think
that.
it's a zero-sum game in terms of, adding people to your board. One of the things that I'm doing this year is I'm actually working with a board development consultant, and we're updating all of our board job descriptions, our board committees, those committee descriptions. And I think, if you approach it from that general strategic perspective, then you can write the descriptions, for example, of the board committees that they should be, say always researching and aware of leading solutions, leading innovative solutions to the problem that you're trying to solve, something like that. And then as you're just building your board, we have a matrix basically of like, okay, what are the skills we need on our board? What are the skills we have? What are the ones we don't have? Then as you've kind of updated those committee job descriptions, you'll be like, oh, well, we need some people who are, more aware of the innovative technology solutions that are relevant in this sector. And so it's a way to just be building your organization versus like commenting on any individual set of skills.
Right. It's not you're not enough. It's here's how this can add. And some board members will get really excited about having the chance to expand their skill set, as well, their strategic skill set. So having someone who really is an expert in this area can help them get better about having tech strategy conversations, either in the context of the board or, in their professional life elsewhere. There's, the really interesting question that came into in the Q&A. I'm just going to read this one. And I love this because it brings up, potential objections. So our board is not tech involved, and our CEO prefers to maintain an advisory governance model rather than having the board in the weeds. And this question is from the senior most tech staff member saying, I would love to have a more tech fluent board to act in an advisory capacity. I've shared the Tech 28 with my CEO. They did not like it, or they did not choose to engage. Do you have any suggestions that I can use to advocate for this focus on the board? So, number one, I'll jump in here, Julie, and let you think about this one, but because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So, number one, first, I'd say you're not alone, because many boards and therefore, many CEOs are really just finding their footing when it comes to technology, I think. Lots of things are changing. What wasn't important even 2 years ago is critically important for folks to feel more up to speed on. And that can be, a sort of uncomfortable moment for folks. And so many leaders will say, oh, that's in the weeds, but it's not. That's not what we're talking about here. Tech is not just operational anymore. It's a values issue. It's a legitimacy issue. It's talking about data ethics and trust and donor accountability. Like every stakeholder, even if they're not telling you yet, will be telling you that they care about how you handle technology. It's about credibility. And those things are absolutely board level concerns. So I'd say, if the Tech 28 maybe felt too detailed, maybe they thought it was like a checklist, you could advocate for starting with like 1 or 2 questions that really directly connect to your mission. Like, safeguarding data can be really important for most people. And start talking about, scenarios there. What might happen if, or could we talk about how we could handle this? And maybe your CEO will see that as, we'll be able to connect that to oversight and values. rather than just operations. Those, ethics, values, security questions can be a great way to open the door, and think about why this has implications beyond just, the IT department. Julie, do you have any thoughts on that? How this person could approach that conversation?
I have one kind of tactical suggestion, just as an executive director myself. I think that if you, as the chief technology officer, could just highlight some recent wins related to use of technology in your work. I know that in our quarterly board meetings, we always start off with programmatic highlights, and it's awesome to see how technology has enabled your organization to make better decisions. Like I talked about our new beautiful Salesforce dashboards. I love showing that to our board members. So instead of bringing it up as like a negative, like, oh, we're inadequate because we don't have these things, just lead with the positive. Like, look at what we've achieved with these, one or two things that we've done recently, and implication is like how much more we could achieve, so that's just kind of a tactical suggestion.
I like that. That was a great counterpoint to my answer, because, I was leading a little bit more with risk and you're going with opportunity. And I think in both cases, the line really is, we can't afford to not talk about tech. And this is why all these cool things that are happening, more can happen. And this is really an ethics and values issue. And there were a couple great comments in the chat about that too. So thank you. Thank you all with that, for that. Other questions for Julie about what she's seeing in the field or how she's handled discussions with her board? Other objections or challenges that you've run into? All right, I've got a few more for you, Julie. One is, what's one thing, again, you've got a very, tech fluent board, but you've certainly interacted with plenty of others. What's one thing you wish every nonprofit board member understood about technology?
I mean, this will sound so basic, but I know it's going to resonate with everyone here. It's just like how stretched we all are, just trying to, even in this like increasingly volatile environment of the past few years, just trying to ensure that like the basics are being delivered with high quality, high fidelity. And then, I mean, I think we all feel like, oh, when someone comes in with this idea of like, hey, let's change everything by doing it this way instead, it's just like, panic, we're already maxed out. So I guess, I do feel like my board understands it pretty well, but that's the one thing I would love for every board member to understand.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not like we have some, R&D department over here where we can experiment on the margin. It's like,
Right.
this is going to come out of our day-to-day operations.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point there. Sometimes you've got one or two board members who maybe aren't, they're tech fluent, but not experts, and they're coming up with lots of bright, shiny ideas, and you spend your time kind of moderating those ideas or walking them back. And that's yet another reason to have a full board that feels at least tech fluent, because they can, do some of that pairing and negotiating for you. They can start thinking ahead to, okay, well, what would be the implications or the true cost of ownership of doing that? And so it's not, it doesn't look like you as the ED are kind of turning things down. So that's a great one. If you could, the pace of change, we've talked about that. The pace of change is really just so fast right now. What do you think is something that you would highlight for folks? Like if you could give yourself, 10 years ago when you were first getting started, one piece of advice about leading tech change with boards, one or two pieces of advice, what would you say there?
You know, it's interesting. I keep thinking about AI as the shiny new object. And, you know, what we have found in
Mhm.
all of this AI capacity building that we're doing globally is like, yes, AI may be like the tip of the spear, but there's so much foundational work that has to happen in terms of like foundational digital literacy, you know, digital citizenship, safety and security, you know, basic infrastructure that has to be in place, then for you to be able to take advantage of this ever changing and evolving set of, you know, innovative tech solutions. And so I guess to answer your question, I would really just try to make sure that all boards understand it's like an iceberg, right? You know, like you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg in terms of this solution that you think is going to, you know, be a silver bullet, but there has to be all of that foundational work that happens as well. So like I think about this, you know, for Team for Tech, our own organization. Yes, we are doing these AI capacity building cohorts, but we're doing so much more under the surface to just, you know, build the fundamentals so that, you know, nonprofits can take advantage of these solutions.
Yeah, and that's a great thing for boards to have a window into. You know, I think one thing I would love all board members to think about is tech is a process, not a project. And I'm sure anyone who leads tech on this call understands how important that is. Um, well, thank you so much, Julie. That was really, really helpful to hear your stories. I'm going to turn it back over to Shruti to talk about the next steps here. And thanks so much for having us for this conversation again.
Yeah, I want to, oh, I realize my camera's not on, but hopefully it'll come on in a second. There you go. Thank you guys both. It was really, really great to hear the discussion and hear the real challenges that everybody's going through, right? It's like we are all here. We know that we want to do more, that we want to engage our boards more, but there's those tactical things about how to get started. And I really appreciate kind of the tech resources that Jessica just shared in the chat. They're really helpful. And I know one of the biggest questions was, are we going to get access to these? We will send the recording. We will send all of these materials with that as well. And, you know, please take a moment to take a look at all of these resources that have been shared. Obviously, some of it can be a little bit overwhelming and stuff, but you know your boards, you know where you're at, you know what might be the most useful for you. And yeah, I'm also sharing here a couple of TechSoup resources that really kind of help in terms of thinking about what kind of technology you might be wanting to advocate for, what are some of the things that you might be thinking about or your board might be interested in, and also kind of exposing some of your board members to what the landscape of technology is for nonprofits. So with that, I just want to thank you both so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing that. Thanks everybody for joining here today. We would love if you could just take a moment to fill out the survey. It's 3 questions. It's in the chat right now. But it really helps us in understanding the content that's available to you and how we can structure and make things better and make sure that we're providing the resources that you need to everybody. So thanks again for your time today. And thank you, Alethea and Julie, for a really, really lovely discussion.